As Don Lemon has been arrested in connection with an anti-ICE protest at a church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Bill Malusha joins us now with more on this breaking news. Hey, Bill.
Yeah, Charlie, good morning to you. Our colleague David Spunt and I getting this breaking news from multiple law enforcement sources just minutes ago, confirming that former CNN anchor Don Lemon has been arrested by federal agents in Los Angeles just after midnight this morning at a hotel. This obviously all in connection with that storming of a church in St. Paul, Minnesota by that group of anti-ICE agitators.
So Don Lemon, a.k.a. Don Lemon, has recently been arrested in Los Angeles by federal agents for his role in that raid of a church outside of the city of St. Paul. Now, as you can see right there, these protesters, so-called protesters, decided that they were going to storm this location during a church service in order to shout down and intimidate a pastor who was not even there because allegedly that pastor was somehow involved with ICE.
Renee good! Renee good! Renee good!
Now, of course, they sold this as a peaceful protest. They would make claims in the mainstream media about how they weren't disrupting and they weren't intimidating anyone, although the videos clearly show that they were.
Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you? You drink your coffee, you got your jewelry, you have your nice clothes, but what do you do? What do you do to stand for your Somali and Latino community?
While we already saw arrests and charges of the main organizer, who is this female Black Lives Matter activist, by the way, somebody who is also running a nonprofit scam where she got a massive donation post George Floyd from the company Walmart and was paying herself $200,000 a year in order to run a nonprofit that was giving out like $70,000 a year in terms of grants, you know, the actual work that the organization was supposed to do.
All these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit as a preacher? Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No! Jesus would dine with immigrants. You do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens.
Hey, you can't.
You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity? Where are you? You're sinners. You're pretending to be Christians. But we know you live an easy life, don't you? A very easy life while people are starving.
And this beardo weirdo who was threatening people, getting in their face, disrupting the church service, and basically implying if you came up to him, he was gonna fight you, as if he was not in somebody else's house of worship, intimidating and threatening people. Now, he had already talked about those two individuals in a previous video and how they were absolutely 100% guilty based on the letter of the law, but now things have changed a little bit because Don Lemon was arrested, and Don Lemon, of course, is a former CNN host. He's claiming that he was just acting as a neutral observer, a member of the media documenting this phenomenon, not actually participating in it, and this is why I want to break down what Don Lemon actually did so you could understand why Don Lemon is technically 100% guilty as charged for the FACE Act, and also why Don Lemon will be deemed to be above the law and not actually face those consequences. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Into Minneapolis a little bit ago and did some reconnaissance on the ground, speaking to an organization there that's gearing up for resistance and protest. I've been pleasantly surprised to see the community coming together. Diverse community. If you see this, when we first pulled up, we're like, wait a minute, which operation are we at? And as it turns out, because we're like, well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right? Saw the American flag or whatever, but these are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up, and it's Takima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd, Dante Wright, and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then after we do this operation, you'll see it live. And these operations are surprise operations. Again, can't tell you where they're going.
So if you look at the stream that Don Lemon is in prior to the storming of the church, he is obviously with the people that are about to go there. And there are different moments in that stream, in the broadcast, where Don Lemon ends up turning off the camera in order to not expose the hands of the people that he is embedded with. Now, of course, you could make the argument that people in bed with U.S. military personnel, and they do so under the condition that they won't give away their position and whatnot. But in reality, this looks a lot more like Don Lemon is participating in the planning of this particular event. He's doing it obviously so that he can monetize the reaction for his podcast, because he's trying to get more attention now that he's left his cushy job at CNN. But obviously, this is a guy who is describing this as an event that we are participating in, meaning him and the other people. And it seems like he is involved in the planning stages or the conspiracy behind this particular event. In addition to that, when we jump forward in just a little bit, what we ultimately end up seeing is that these people show up to the church, and at some point in time, they start chanting. And by the way, they're chanting ridiculous things, including hands up, don't shoot, which of course is a callback to the Michael Brown hoax. And during that whole fiasco and all that chaos, Don Lemon takes an opportunity to confront the pastor who is trying to get people out of his church.
What do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship. So,
But there were folks who will...
I have to take care of my flock.
Listen, we live in there's a constitution and a First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus, because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world, is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why we're here. Okay. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a
no
Christian?
one is willing to talk.
Okay.
Now, of course, Don Lemon is going to describe this as him simply reporting the event that he knew about beforehand, worked on the planning with, decided that he was going to join in on. However, I will point out that this also is very similar to some of the journalistic criticism that Chris Hansen received with his famous series To Catch a Predator, because many people noted in the industry that it is over the line of journalistic ethics when you're not reporting the news and you're actually participating in manufacturing the news. And in my opinion, this is exactly what Don Lemon is doing right here. He was involved in this organized event in the planning stages. We saw that. He ended up covering up from his audience where it was going to occur prior to the event so that they wouldn't get busted. And then he waits for the people to participate, and in fact actually says that he has to go in last after them because he doesn't want to be recognized, because he's so famous, so wonderful, and so special, to make sure that their plan can go off without a hitch. And then, even though the goal was to confront the pastor, Don Lemon is one of the first people to get up in the face of the pastor and multiple parishioners. And by the way, people have pointed this out, that you can actually see through the various still images that you could see people obviously being upset, children crying. Apparently one of the children that was crying was 6 years old. So this was obviously a disgusting act by these activists. But again, according to them, somebody working at this church violated their political religion. Therefore, their freedom of religion needs to be subordinated to them. And obviously, this is ridiculous and this is absurd. But I think it's important for us to look at the FACE Act, because in a previous video, we talked about the Klan Act. And obviously, this would be a violation of that. But the FACE Act is a much more recent law that has been used by the Biden DOJ in order to go after pro-life protesters. So I think it is important for us to actually examine what's in that law, and of course talk about previous journalists who were prosecuted for covering events while being embedded in said event. Now, the FACE Act is actually called the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. However, it is clear by the law that it does not only apply to abortion clinics. And we go to point 2. Whoever by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with, or attempts attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person exercising or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right to religious freedom at a place of worship shall be subject to the penalties in subsection B and civil remedies provided in subsection C, except that a partner, legal guardian of a minor shall not be subject to any penalties or civil remedies under this section for such activities insofar that they are directed exclusively at a minor. Now look, there is jail for up to 6 months, I believe, if it's a first-time offense and it is not actually involving violence, fines up to $10,000. And to understand how broad this law actually is, what you need to get is this case out of Tennessee that was prosecuted by the Biden administration, because everything I said about Section 2 and how it applies to religious institutions also applies to abortion clinics in Section 1. And in that particular case, you had a bunch of Christian anti-abortion activists that went to like a shared building, and in the hallway of that shared building, so not actually in the abortion clinic, just near the abortion clinic, they were singing Christian hymns and whatnot.
You know what I heard? I heard an old story, how the Savior came from glory, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me.
And yet they were prosecuted under the FACE Act, even though they were quite literally not blocking the entrance and thus not actually physically preventing people from going in. They were just intimidating enough in order to get those federal prosecutions. And by the way, this was despite the fact that the state of Tennessee in that particular case had actually charged all of those protesters with trespassing because they were on private property, which of course the state of Minnesota refuses to do in this particular case. So you already had the regular ordinary judicial system addressing that issue, unlike this particular case. And yeah, based on that case, based on what we saw was considered obstruction, was considered intimidation, Don Lemon obviously met that standard. And again, if you don't believe me, just imagine a little bit of a different scenario. Let's say somebody was booted off of Fox News. They left in shame and they decided that they wanted to establish themselves as a podcaster, but it wasn't going so well. They got fired from Twitter.com like Don Lemon did. So what they decided to do was team up with a right-wing organization that was going to storm a mosque in order to confront an imam for political beliefs that they didn't agree with. And in that particular scenario, everything played out exactly as it did right here, including a 6-year-old child that was crying, little Muhammad. You know for a fact that that right-wing journalist would not be able to obfuscate the blame for that, and they would end up being prosecuted. By the way, some journalists who were credentialed to be in the Capitol on January 6th were prosecuted for their actions on January 6th, despite the fact that they were saying that they were just there to cover the event as press. In fact, there is a quote from a judge where it says, just because you're a journalist doesn't mean what you did isn't illegal, and that particular journalist ended up getting a suspended sentence of 12 months plus a $2,000 fine. So yeah, by the letter of the law, Don Lemon is definitely guilty. If the political opinions were flipped and Don Lemon was a right-wing journalist, former Fox News host, he would definitely be convicted. If they went into a mosque or even a synagogue or a Hindu temple and did the same exact thing based on political differences, they would obviously be convicted. But I'm here to tell you guys right now out there in the audience, there is a 0% chance that Don Lemon will be convicted on these charges. First and foremost, one of the things that we found out is that the Trump administration actually pursued an arrest warrant against Don Lemon with one of the same judges judges that granted the warrant against the other two individuals. And guess what? That judge refused. Then the Trump administration actually appealed that to another judge, and that appellate judge also refused.
Now remember, the feds had gone to judges to try to get Don Lemon arrested before. They went to a magistrate judge in Minnesota who didn't sign off on an arrest warrant for him. Then it went to a judge above him. He didn't sign off on an arrest warrant for him. Then it went to an appeals court. They also decided not to sign off for an arrest warrant for him. So there was experts who were predicting that perhaps the feds would go to a grand jury. It remains to be seen if that's what happened here.
So it appears that they've gotten a grand jury indictment against Don Lemon in order to secure this. It has not been confirmed so far that that is the route that they've taken. And even though it's clear and obvious that Don Lemon is 100% guilty, I'm telling you right now, there is a 97% chance that Don Lemon will be able to get these charges dismissed prior to his trial. There's also, if that doesn't happen, a near 100% that they won't be able to get a jury from this particular area in order to convict Don Lemon. Again, they're going to use the excuse that he's essentially akin to a war correspondent that was embedded with the people there. He wasn't going to expose them and endanger the mission, but he wasn't an active participant, even though he absolutely was, and he's going to get away with it. And I don't want to lie to you guys out there in the audience and tell you something that's untrue, but this is something that I warned about in my previous video, because all that's going to happen as a result of this is that Don Lemon is going to further play the martyr. Again, he was out doing interviews saying that he wanted to be arrested for this, that he wanted the evil bad orange man to target him just a little bit harder, and now you gave him exactly what you wanted, because guess what? It's D for different. Don Lemon will not face consequences for this, because the left never faces consequences for this kind of stuff. Remember, the Black Lives Matter rioters, they were all let go. Their federal charges were quietly dismissed during the Biden administration, because guess what? If you're a left-wing activist, you are allowed to do whatever you want, commit whatever acts of violence with basically no consequences. By contrast, the January 6 people, even when they were charged with trespassing, they were hunted down around the nation. They were raided repeatedly by the feds, militarized operations. Remember, Roger Stone was also raided by the feds in a very public way that I believe was covered by Don Lemon on CNN. And this is because there are different standards. It's in the same way that if you commit a sex crime as a Muslim in the UK, you're going to get a lighter sentence than the person who points out that yet another Muslim has committed a sex crime in the UK. So yeah, while you're going to see a bunch of different people give you the legal standard and make a compelling case that Don Lemon is in violation of this law in the same way that the other activists were in violation of this law, the fact of the matter is you will see no convictions guaranteed in this particular case. It is going to be a victory from Don Lemon, and of course, it's going to shift the focus from the crime that actually occurred, the clear and obvious FACE Act violation, to Don Lemon being a victim and the evil bad orange man going after the free press. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. Hate to break it to you guys, but I gotta be honest. I want to know your thoughts down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Don Lemon being 100% guilty and yet going to escape justice. Till next time.